All right, I think we're ready to get started. I want to welcome everybody today. We are going to be talking about planning worship for the special seasons that are coming up, Thanksgiving, Advent, and Christmas. And as our panelists just said, it's a pretty good day when you can sit around and just talk worship with other worship planners. So we're excited to have all of you with us here. I want to just make a few notes. My name is Diane Dykegraff. This webinar is being sponsored by Worship Ministries. We will also be recording this webinar, so you can watch it later or pass it on to friends. We'll be posting it on the network and on the website. And also, for those of you who are attending, you will be able to watch and listen to our panelists today discuss worship from their settings, and you will also be able to ask questions. And to do that, type in your questions in the chat box. You can do that anytime during the presentation. If you'd like to ask one of the panelists something about their presentation or offer a suggestion to them that you've done, feel free, please, to type that into the chat box, and we will include you in that as well. Welcome, Kevin, to our panelists. We're glad to have you here. Katie's going to start the webinar in just a few minutes, and Katie Roloffs is our kind of our host for this webinar today. So she will be leading through it all. So thank you all again, and I will turn it over at this time to Katie. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks, Diane. Hope everybody is having a good afternoon. We were comparing notes, all of the panelists ahead of time, about what our weather looks like today. I'm sitting here in Maryland right now, and it's about 73 degrees. So it's hard to picture sitting down to plan Advent and Christmas when it's 73 degrees and beautiful and sunny outside. But we will make the best of being liturgically appropriate, even though the weather might not be yet. But we're going to begin this webinar with a word of prayer. So I invite you to pray with me. Great are you, Lord, and you are most worthy of praise. God, we are humbled by the opportunity that we have today to gather as your servants, who have been richly, richly blessed with the work of your church. We marvel at the ways that you have drawn us together from so many different backgrounds and from so many different congregations, and you've given us a shared space to do work, to be encouraged by one another, and to build your kingdom one worship service at a time. Thank you, God, for this gifted space. So we pray that at the time that we spend together today might be fruitful for our work, might be a blessing to one another and uplifting to one another, and most importantly, bring you honor and glory and praise that you deserve in your church. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So as Diane said, this is an opportunity for us to just do a little bit of roundtable worship planning. I was sitting there and I was by myself one afternoon. I would love just a chance to be able to pick other people's brains about something very, very specific. And was thinking this would be a great opportunity for a group of panelists who we have at the top, and then the participants below. Between all of us, I bet we have 1,000 worship services in our banks, and however many years of doing Thanksgiving and Advent and Christmas. And that's a lot of people power, and that's a lot of brain space and a lot of Holy Spirit work that has gone into all of those services. So I thought it'd be interesting to just get a roundtable worship planning meeting going with each other. An opportunity to bounce ideas off of each other and to encourage one another, maybe to answer some bigger picture things about a theme that you're working with this year, or even something very specific, like I need a song that's going to go with this text and I can't find one, so find some from the collective body around us. But as we begin today, we've got 5 of us who are on screen up top. So I'd like to go around and just do a quick little intro, just like a personal intro about who you are and where you're coming from, where you're serving, and give us like one fun or interesting fact about your worship or your worship style, I guess. I'm going to hand it to Christine to go first.
Thanks, Katie. I'm Christina Jipping, and I am leading worship in Kalamazoo at Westwood Christian Reformed Church. And I have a background in music education and choral conducting. I think I'm in like my 4th Christmas season of planning. So I still feel relatively new with planning worship, But one interesting fact about us here at Westwood is that we're just launching a choral scholars program for adult choir. We've got a couple of colleges and universities nearby, and we want to connect with campuses. And so we've had the opportunity to appoint one choral scholar so far, and hoping to do another choral scholar in the near future.
Very cool. You're up, James.
Hi, I'm James Lee. I currently serve as the lead pastor at Christ Community in East Islip, New York. We're about an hour and a half east of New York City. For the longest time, I was in worship, so I thought I would continue to be in worship, but God had other plans, and He threw me into lead pastor position for some reason. Still trying to figure out why. Love worship. Especially love the Advent season because I think it's incredibly important to celebrate Advent in the right way. So I'm just looking forward to this conversation and excited to contribute what I've learned as well as a former worship apprentice at Calvin, now university, and also I spent some time at the Worship Institute as well. So happy to be here.
Thanks, James. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, there I am. Sorry, struggling to find the unmute button there. Yeah, my name's Kyle Vanderzee. I'm in Northwest Indiana. The name of the town is De Mott, a little Dutch hub, so you've probably heard of it. But we're kind of like, the church is planted by some De Mott churches across the tracks in Roselawn, Indiana. So very different vibe in Roselawn than De Mott. But anyway, yeah, I've been in my position for 11 years now at the same church, which is crazy. It just went really fast. I still feel new. And yeah, we have a few kids, 3 daughters, which is really fun. And yeah, we're working on planning something based on hope that I'll talk about later, our Hope Advent series. So anyway, yeah, fun fact about the church. It's a weird fact. There's 2 nudist colonies right next door to the church, which is so weird. So weird that it's in Indiana. I don't get that. And just a really strange thing. You kind of forget that they're there, but it's weird.
You win for bizarre church fact for the day, Kyle. You win for that. Nobody can top that. We'll give you a chance, Kevin. You're up.
Me?
I just unmuted you, Kevin. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, Kevin Saltzman, Michigan. I'm at Beckwith Hills Christian Reformed Church, and I've been here for 13 years. Been a worship director for at least 20. So I'm kind of an old hat at the practice, but I'm always looking at different things to do. So in worship, and lately we have added kind of an orchestral quartet to our praise band of a horn, 2 violins, and a flute, and it's worked out quite well, oddly enough. But it does work with our general praise band. One thing about our church is they still love the classic hymns and still love the organ, and so I incorporate that in as much as possible.
Kevin, I don't know if you're, I know you had to move around first when we got started.
Yep.
I don't know if you're holding your computer in your lap or not, but it's moving around a little bit. I don't know if you can stabilize it some so
Yep.
that we're recording this so that people can watch it later. So we're hoping, and we have some people attending too, so it'll help if yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you mute and unmute yourself. Just unmute yourself every time you talk. If you can find the mute button there.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay.
Another fun fact is about 16 years ago, my very first year of ever doing Easter, Kevin and I co-conducted an Easter thing together. And that almost scared me out of ministry for good, my first Easter, but hey, nope, still here. I'm Katie Rulofs. I am currently serving 2 churches in the DC area. The CRC has 3 churches in the DC area, 1 in Maryland, 1 in Virginia, and 1 in DC. And I'm serving at both the DC and the Maryland one. One is the minister of music and worship, and the other as their coordinator of worship. So I get double the fun come Advent and come Easter and come all of those things. I get double the fun with 2 churches to plan for. So there's never a dull moment there. But thanks to our panelists for giving us a quick little rundown on yourselves. We'll have approximately, I'd say, like 10 minutes or so per person where you have the opportunity to basically ask anything you want to, or yeah, just kind of go around the table with things. I like that we have a diverse body of people who are coming from different backgrounds and from different settings. So I encourage you guys and also people who are listening in onto this call to have all your tools handy. Treat this like a normal worship planning meeting, except we're doing it virtually, and you're doing it with people who do this for a living. So it's a great opportunity. But so have your hymnals and your web browsers and your hymnary and a cup of coffee in hand, and we'll be good to go. Yeah, I think we're ready to go. So I'm going back to Christina as number 1. If you want to lead off, go for it.
Sure. I'm going to start with my most specific question, and then we'll get more general after that. But I'll give you an idea of, I plan for a congregation that has been traditional for so many years, but has recently joined into one service to really strive for a balance of 80-20 towards the contemporary side, and strives to be family friendly, engaging, loves to celebrate and be enthusiastic. So that's kind of the people, the body that I have in mind when I'm planning. And we are going to be looking at the Advent theme of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And that's about all that I know at this point for planning the Advent. And so I'm wondering, what suggestions do you have for planning a series based around C.S. Lewis's Narnia Chronicles?
You're in luck. We did that 2 years ago. So
Woo!
I have resources for you. I have adhesive doors, wardrobe doors for you if you want them. I kid you not. We found them on Amazon, like adhesive double doors that look like the front of a wardrobe that you can like put somewhere, somewhere in your sanctuary. Yeah, when we ended up using them for a lot of different things, which was really, really interesting.
Awesome. Adhesive double doors. Great.
Yeah, we have that. I've got a lot of interesting things, but before I storm ahead, since this is something that we've done, I can hand it over to others if others have immediate thoughts on Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm also curious from the people who are also on this call, have any of you done Narnia, or are any of you looking to do Narnia in the next little while?
Not me. No, I was speechless when you mentioned that, Christina. I have no ideas for you off the top of my head, but that sounds really cool. I can see the potential there.
Like I said, very specific.
Yeah.
I don't know what songs you're looking at, but the powers of darkness and evil, being overcome by goodness and light. So, even the let all mortal flesh keep silence kind of type song. I know that's not the upbeat type, vibe, but maybe you could find a more updated version of that. But I think a lot of the Christmas carols and Advent carols have that goodness and light kind of thing that you can incorporate into that.
Thanks, Kevin.
One thing we worked with, one of the main themes that like it's great and you can easily pick up on during Advent is the idea of that it's always winter and never Christmas. That's kind of like the line that keeps running through. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is like they're suffering because it's always winter and it's never Christmas. But then Christmas finally comes with Father Christmas's arrival. And so I think that's what we used to play off of for like Advent candles and stuff, is kind of that concept of always winter and never Christmas. Which there's a lot of good stuff to work with there. We did a Narnian lessons and carols service. I don't know if you guys do lessons and carols, but we did an entire service based around the characters from, I paired the characters from Narnia with biblical characters from lessons and carols. It took a little bit of finagling to end up making that work, but I can share that with you as well. And anyone else on the call who's interested in seeing that. But that was a really interesting service, because if you pair up, that you clearly have like your Aslan Christ figure and other things. But I paired up Father Christmas with Zechariah and just all of those different characters, and it was a really interesting service for that. So I can share that with you offline and anyone else who wants it at some point in time.
Thanks, Katie. I look forward to hearing more about what you guys did, and thankful that you did that a couple of years ago.
We did it a couple of years ago, and I first heard about it. I'm like, I don't know how that will go over, but there's a lot of good stuff there. There's a lot of richness to dive into. So for Kevin, Kyle, James, and anyone else, it was a really neat series, and we found ways to be intergenerational about it too. That this is a way that kids can get involved and that your youth can get involved really easily and really well. So, yeah.
Well, thanks. Let's maybe move on to something more general for the time being. Possibly. Last year, we started up a seasonal worship planning team of 4 to 6 people, myself, our pastor, and kind of a subcommittee from our worship leadership team. And they get together for 2 to 3 meetings to help plan Thanksgiving, Advent, and Christmas. I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for how do you prepare a team like this that's got some volunteers on it who aren't regularly planning worship. How do you educate them or give them some great resources so that they feel like they can fully participate without a whole lot of extra time or reading? Any thoughts on that?
I actually just had a conversation with a Christian Reformed pastor in California to talk about that exact same question. Something I believe is everything is contextual. So you can't give the same answer in every situation. But one thing I realize is that when you bring in volunteers, when you bring in all these people from different backgrounds and where they are with worship, you need to bring in the definition of worship together before you even plan, the definition of worship that people see needs to be on the same page. So I would highly encourage talking about worship. What does worship mean to you? And what's your definition of worship? And then once that is kind of once that brings everybody on the same page, then you can talk about the nuts and bolts of the planning aspects of how do we want to see this service? How do we want to see that service? But I think the biggest key is to bring everybody together on cohesive definition of worship. Because if you have different definitions of worship, then you're not going to get anywhere planning. It's going to take way too long. If not, you're not going to go anywhere. So I think that definition of worship is incredibly important.
Thanks, James. Really appreciate that.
Do you guys have like a defined like worship statement?
Not particularly to Westwood. It's something that I've been interested though in creating. It's possible that at some point somebody did create one, but I don't think I've ever been given one.
You'd think, that'd be a good thing if there was such a thing for you. But that would be an interesting way to start too, is to craft something like that, like what James said, that you kind of put together your foundations and you start to build the building from the bottom versus the top. It doesn't start with what song you're going to sing here. It starts with what is our grounded theology of worship, and from what place are we coming?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I've always found it helpful that if those that are attending a worship planning session like that, at least come to the table with some brainstorming thoughts as they've read the text, or thoughts that come to mind with the themes, and they don't have to be the concrete things, but just a brainstorm. And then when you bring them all to the table on a whiteboard or whatever, that other people have different thoughts, different ideas, and so then when you look at the list, everybody can kind of see where maybe there is a common thread that everybody brought together, and that's the Holy Spirit saying, hey, this is what I need to say to your congregation. And then also knowing, where is your congregation at? Have they gone through a tough time? What in the text brings that out, if anything, and spend some time with that in worship as well.
Thanks, Kevin.
Any other questions, Christina?
I do have one more if you think that we've got time
Go
for it.
Go for it.
So as I said, we have a long history of traditional worship services. We currently have a small adult choir and a small children's choir, but I've heard from the congregation that they're really longing for relevant and contemporary and family-friendly worship services, really a lot of enthusiasm. And I'm wondering, how do you plan services that kind of the congregation can really sing well into, if they're looking at how do we do these special services in a new way? Does that question make sense?
Sort of. Give a one sentence synopsis again.
So there's classic hymns that we would be used to singing on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, during Advent. And if the congregation both has this rich history, but also wants to explore new ways of worshiping and more contemporary ways of worshiping, sometimes I'm concerned to introduce new things on special services. So maybe how do you build a repertoire of songs that are seasonal, because you're not singing them throughout the year, that becomes familiar, that your congregation can really engage in? More clear?
Yeah, that's we like James said, everything's contextual, but in my context, we probably have that same, what your goal is, that's pretty much where we're at, like 80-20 kind of thing, mostly contemporary but still kind of rooted in tradition. But I tend to, for Thanksgiving and Christmas Day especially, keep it pretty traditional. Just, yeah, it's sort of I don't know, there's something, at least in our context, that's kind of cool about these, it's boring, but it's also cool that these are the songs that we sing every Thanksgiving, but that's the only time we sing them once a year, so there's something kind of cool about that, I think. But I think a good way to bridge the gap a little bit, which you're probably all over, but like anytime that there's a hymn that's paired with a new chorus kind of thing, yeah, like I always think of The Wonderful Cross by Chris Tomlin as sort of the shining example of that. But I know there's Christmas versions of those. Like Paul Balash has 2 whole albums of that, and some of those have been helpful to us. Yeah. So that's my advice, is those, when you can kind of get a win-win where it's a classic song but done with some freshness. It's always kind of cool. Or a brand new song, but then you sort of medley into a classic Christmas carol and maybe sandwich that with a Christmas carol, something like that. Those are always, I like finding those win-wins,
Yeah.
fresh but rooted in tradition too.
Thanks, Kyle. We started exploring some of those songs by Paul Balash last year, so I agree that that's a great resource.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Another interesting idea, something we've done in the past, is if it's a new song that you're hoping to use on like a high day on Christmas or Easter, is take snippets of it. Trying to think of, it was the See What a Morning by the Gettys that I wanted to introduce and have everybody sing on Easter morning, but also didn't want to throw in a new song first thing on Easter morning and have nobody be able to sing, because that's wah, wah. Take little snippets of it and use it as refrains and intersperse it throughout the season, so that you're teaching it little bit by little bit, like one line, 1 or 2 lines at a time. Pick sections of it so that by the time you get to that day, it's relatively familiar. But pull little bits of it and have it be like a sung refrain in the middle of your prayer of confession, or a sung refrain during a morning prayer or in response or something, but find teachable moments to even introduce just little bits of it at a time, until you lead up and you finally get to sing the full thing on the day. Diane is asking if I saw Jeff's comment. Jeff's comment on the side, it seems that it might need to take place over the course of several years. I think a congregation can learn one new song in a service, perhaps have it on a pre-service loop the Sunday before, and then put it out on social media or email. Great idea.
Love it, Jeff. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks to all of you.
For time's sake, I'm moving on to Kyle.
All right, yeah. So I had a couple of questions. Like I said, we're doing a series on hope, Advent series on hope. So one of the things that we're hoping to do is like some sort of full congregation art project kind of thing. Like maybe taking those letters of HOPE, since there's conveniently 4 of them, and having almost an acrostic. Each sermon has to do with each letter, but then maybe there's some sort of response where we have some like blank letters in the lobby area, and then each sermon there's some sort of piece of art or something that people write an idea on based on the service, and they add that to the H, for week 1. And so we're kind of collectively creating this piece of artwork in our lobby. So curious if you guys have done any like big full congregation, we all work together on a piece of art thing, and any things you may have learned along the way.
Now, big question is, how do you want to define art? That's one
That's
thing.
the trick.
But what I thought was really cool was when our denomination's Canada offices in Burlington, Ontario, when they finished up some renovation, they sent a call out to all the churches to send in a little square patch to sew together to make into a big quilt, kind of like a mosaic of different patches. To do something like that, to make into a big mosaic where you can present it throughout, what hope means. Like you can, whether it's a quilt patch or whether it's like a little 8.5 by 11. If there's a way to, I haven't done this, but I've been inspired by what the denomination did at the Canadian offices to potentially even bring it in to my church as well somehow. But if there's a way to bring in a mosaic of all these different pieces of what hope means to various people and make it into big artwork, where you can have it in like your foyer or like, you know, the entranceway of your church. That might be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, James. I like that.
Did you see Jeff's comment over in the comment section, Kyle?
Yeah. Yeah. We used Illustrated Children's Ministry. I think we bought something from them last year and did like an Advent coloring contest, which went over really well too. That was kind of a fun thing. Found a piece of art that, like a coloring page basically, that fit really well with the Advent series, and then little coloring contest. That was a fun way to engage people in a different way. We don't do a lot with art, so it's kind of a good switch up for us.
For those of you who can't see the comment, Jeff said, we used Illustrated Children's Ministry for Lent a couple years ago. We had a coloring center set up to be colored during, before, and following each service. I love the idea of having them color one letter of hope each.
Yeah, good stuff.
Something we did a couple years ago, Kyle, we did this with the word joy, though, is I don't remember if we bought or if we had somebody make, they were like 2 or 3 foot high wooden letters, which we suspended by fish line, and we had them like lined up behind a different bolt of cloth so they each stood out, but we had the word joy going across. But I wonder, even if you had 4 letters of hope, and what I don't remember if we did this or not, but each of the letters, if they're just on plain wood, you can use colored Sharpies and people could come forward to like a response time type of thing, like what is it that you hope for, and have it be thematic and service-based, so that each of those letters ends up being filled with writing or prayers or words, specific things by the congregation, so that when you look up at them, you clearly read hope, but each of them are filled with some kind of response from the congregation that's done in color.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Can I ask another question? Okay. Yeah, so then also just curious about if there's any songs that come to mind for you guys that are, that have been effective in your context related to the theme of hope. And like whether that's traditional or contemporary, or the other thing that I'm thinking of is we don't have a regular choir. I put together a choir for Christmas and for Easter. So it has to be like pretty insultingly easy choir music because it's a real ragtag group. But if you have any suggestions of insultingly easy hope themed choir music too, I'm all ears to that too. So just curious.
The first thing that
Sorry, go ahead. A big contemporary song that is very big, literally on the wavelengths right now, is "Living Hope" by Phil Wickham, and that's been like the center of it all for many churches lately when you talk about hope. And I appreciate how Phil Wickham wrote about the resurrection of the gospel hope within that song. So that's pretty well written, and so if contemporary wise, I that's usually my go-to for hope. Yeah.
That's a great one. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Kyle, do you guys sing Song of Hope? It's a little bit of an older one. Robbie Shea Band, I think.
Okay.
Originally played it, but I just looked it up on Song Select. The other title of it is Heaven Come Down, and so I think it would be a really great tie for an Advent. But it is a little bit of maybe an older contemporary song.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Christina.
Try the choral piece "In Hope We Wait, Emmanuel" by Douglas Wagner.
Okay.
It's SATB, but there are ways, we did this a couple years ago, and I did it with a smaller choir. There are ways to adapt that you could even make it 2-part or an SAB. But that was That was a good one. And Hope We Wait, Emmanuel Douglas Wagner, Wagner.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, you read my mind with the SAB. That is, man, whoever
Poor
invented
tenors.
SAB choir music is a genius. It's just the kind of thing we need.
I don't know if you're into the Getty song selections, but
Sure.
I do a lot with Getty music and with my choir, and a lot of times I use their hymnal version and the piano accompaniment to almost any of their songs, and just kind of parse it out with, one verse being the men and the next verse being women or something like that. And then if there's a chorus or a break in the middle, have the whole choir jump in. It's an easy way to learn a song. It's very hymnalish. The choir doesn't feel like they're learning some audacious big piece, but yet they sound great. And you can put a band with it if you want. And
Yeah. Oh, I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
So putting men on one verse, women on another
Yeah.
verse, and then maybe
Yep.
turning it into a two-part thing on the chorus. Is that
You could do a two-part thing with sopranos and tenors. Usually those are parallel out in sixths. A lot of contemporary writing, and so you instantly have a two-part chorus, with that as well. You can, first line sopranos, second line tenors, third line altos, fourth line basses, and you instantly make an anthem without having to rewrite the whole thing, kind of a thing.
I like the way you think, Kevin. That's great.
I do it all the time. My choir loves it because they're like, we just have to learn these few notes, and and I'm like, yes, that's it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
From the chat section from Jeff, Song of Hope by Robbie Shea.
Oh, yeah, the one that Christina mentioned. Excellent.
Any other questions, Kyle?
I think I might have had one more. No, not really, actually. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Interesting you guys are doing Hope too, because we are doing Hope, but we're doing Hope in a minor key. It's all minor prophets for Advent. So I'm going to make them sing minor all of Advent. And no, I'm kidding.
Oh, that's just cruel. Just until Christmas Day, and then you go major for all the keys.
We'll do like a Picardy third on Christmas Day or something.
There you go.
Finally, like, yay, here we are. Anyway. All right, James, you're up next.
I just have to say on record that Kevin Suitsma is like the Michael Jordan of worship people in the Christian Reformed Church. So if you ever need anything, go bother Kevin Suitsma, because I consider him the Godfather. I consider him like the expert beyond all experts. So I just have to make sure that's on record. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but he is so gifted in so many ways. I've learned so much already. So Kevin Suitsma is the one. He is the MVP.
I think you should share his phone number publicly with all of us. I'm kidding, James. I'm kidding.
Well, the entire world of YouTube will then find out. So I'll probably get in big trouble. I'm coming at this from a unique perspective, because I am obviously the pastor, so I'm doing the teaching, but also I'm very involved with the worship aspect and the worship planning aspect as well. What we decided to do was, we've been doing a year-long series through the Belgian Confession. And then rather than stray away from what we've been learning through the Belgian Confession, we've decided to kind of make this like a 3-year step-by-step plan. So like we're considering this the bottom layer of the big triangle, bottom layer of the pyramid, where we are learning the foundations of our faith. Now this next level during the season of Advent, we're we're going to try to learn the why, and the how to. So we haven't really named it yet, but the big key that we're trying to do is Christian living. How can we apply what we've learned in the foundational aspects of our theology, of our life, of our relationship with Christ, and how can we apply it? Because the worship people at our church, we said, rather than doing something so Christmas specific, this is actually pretty important as well. As we wait for the coming of our King, we need to learn how to apply what we've learned and live out that life as we anticipate Christ. So my question, I guess, is, do we have any song suggestions for Christian living? And also, if you have ever done an Advent series that is not your quote unquote stereotypical Christmassy Advent series, how has it been? Because this is my personal first time doing something that is not really Advent-y and Christmas-y, but we're trying to make this, like I said, a big continuation of what we've started on January 1, 2019 to continue on step by step. And the inspiration of that is a book from Mike Breen called The Building a Discipling Culture. And it's a triangle of our out relationship, our in relationship, and our up down relationship. So out relationship with the outsider as we evangelize, the in relationship with one another as a church, and the up relationship with Christ. So that's kind of like our inspiration of why we're doing this kind of a three-step process. But my two questions is some song ideas in regards to Christian living, and second question is, how has your experience been if you have done an Advent series that is really not Adventy at all? How has it gone? Was it a hit or a miss? Yeah.
First song that came to mind that will actually work for Advent too, because as I'm thinking Christian living, I'm like, oh, that would work, but that has nothing to do with Advent. First song came to mind though, View the Present Through the Promise in the Red Book. It's kind of an obscure one. It has a really good and deep text about viewing everything. I think there's this great line, pattern all you're calculating in the world that you're creating, something will come again. It's kind of reframing and reshaping all of the points of our lives to be directed to the fact that Christ will come again. That could be an interesting point or interesting hook for you. We did that a couple years ago and used different verses of it for our Advent candle lighting, and kind of like wrapped all of our candle lighting texts and readings and stuff around that song. But that was the first thing that came to mind.
I guess, yeah, that's a tricky thing, because my congregation is, if we don't do Christmas starting the week after Thanksgiving, I'll be hung. And so I always, even though it's even the week after Christmas, I personally am not there, with the full-fledged Hark the Herald Angels Sing kind of a thing. But if I inject one Christmas carol, I'm a winner to the congregation, because to them, they want to feel like Christmas is coming. But I play it carefully, even if it's O Come Emmanuel, or something like that. To them, that's just Christmas. But to do something on Christmas in the Christmas season, or in the Advent season even, would be, it's a risk, but it can be done well. But I think if you are careful with your music selections and your how you present it, I think it can come off well. Just keep in mind that the congregation does like to hear the Christmas carol. kind of a thing. And then as far as songs are concerned, the other Advent or Christmas carol in the Red Book in Luya is Imagine by the Gettys. But there's a second one, it's not Christmas, but it really works with daily living. It's called A Christian's Daily Prayer. It's off the Sovereign Grace music. You can get it for free. And it really, Lord be glorified today in everything I do, kind of a thing. So you might be able to, work that through. I've used it on Labor Day as a part of Christian living. And my congregation really likes it. It's easy to sing too.
There's a reason why you're the Michael Jordan of worship in regards to the Christian Reformed Church.
So to sort of piggyback off of what Kevin said, yeah, that was kind of my gut as you were talking too, is I wouldn't be too nervous about not having the sermons feel super Christmassy, but I would definitely, yeah, I think people really crave some of those classic carols. And man, I was struck last Christmas season listening to some Christmas music on the radio, how hard it can be to hear like really good Christmas music, unless it's the local Christian stations. They usually do a pretty good job, but oh my word, it's just all jingle bells and so many Santa Clauses coming to town and the Grinch song. It's just trash, so there aren't a ton of places where people can get the really good Christmas carols that, I guess my tendency in when I was early on is, people are sick of those. I'll try to reinvent the wheel, and now I'm pretty convinced. No, the classics are so helpful. They're such a gift. So I think that'll give you such a nice Christmassy vibe through the services. That'll balance things out.
A comment from Jeff, the song You Are the Light by Steve Fee. It has some good themes about caring for the lost and the broken and being the people of God who shine the light of Christ in the world. It's not a Christmas song, but certainly works in that theme. It's one for record.
So for anybody watching on YouTube, this recording, or anybody watching live right now, for anybody who is always caught in the middle of, do I take a risk and go one way or the other? I'll let you all know, because it is a risk, but at the same time, contextually, our church needed to continue, at least from the teaching aspect, we needed to continue to add on from what we've been learning throughout the beginning of the year. But like the godfather of all godfathers, Kevin Suitsman, said, to bring the carols in and to balance it out through the music selections as well as the readings. We shall see how it goes. But for anybody who is willing to take the risk, God be with you.
And also with you. All right, we'll turn it over to Kevin.
Hi. Yeah, I've been just kind of broad stroking my thoughts as far as what to do for Christmas and Thanksgiving and Advent. And I have been really listening intently with one of the newer songs called Is He Worthy by Andrew Peterson. And my huge 12-inch brush says, do it at Advent and do it at Lent. And do it, and then like on Christmas morning, yes, he is worthy kind of a thing. But during Advent, leave off that part of the yes, he is worthy, and just kind of leave it with the question still in people's head. And same way in Lent and Easter. Is it a difficult song to sing? Probably. But I would think with a little bit of leadership, and I consider my congregation pretty musical. So I think once we've done it once or twice, they're in. kind of a thing, and they're used to me doing something just totally bizarre in the beginning anyway. So, so that's my broad stroke of, beginning the services of Advent, Lent, Easter, with the song going, "Is He Worthy?" And just seeing where that goes. Maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. But I didn't know if anybody else had a thought on that. And then for lessons and carols, we do every year, but I'm kind of running out of ideas. And I know there's all kinds of Reformed worship things. I've done probably half of them, and have gone onto the Calvin Institute website and done the other half of those. So if anybody has a particular theme, I kind of like the Narnia theme a little bit. Gives me a little bit of a, like, well, okay, maybe we can do this too, kind of a thing. But I'm still toying with the "Is He Worthy" song, and how does that fit in candlelight as well. So.
Kevin, I introduced "Is He Worthy" with our choir in Good Friday service.
Okay.
And the congregation and the choir loved it so much that they asked to sing it as a congregation. And so we've been singing it as a congregation throughout the summer. We had a series on Revelation, so it fit in really well. And every time that we bring it back, people love to sing it. I didn't ever think about doing the whole not answering the question concept, although I've done that with O Come, Emmanuel last Advent. So I think that is the anticipation that comes along with that is really beautiful. I have no doubt that your congregation could do it well and would love it.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like "Is He Worthy" is pretty, it's not too intimidating for a congregation, especially if you tell them all you got to sing is
He is.
"We do." If they just sing the echoes at first.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And then the second time we sang it, I was like, if you want to, you could sing with me on the first part too, and kind of introduce it that way. People grabbed hold of it pretty readily.
My mind instantly jumps to, like, how can you take that song and turn it into a lessons and carols service? Lessons and carols service. And, okay, maybe it's a stretch, and maybe you'd get it down on paper and look at it and be like, that's absolutely ridiculous. But as you look at the lyrics of it, you could break that up into a pretty cool looking lessons and carols. Because those,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, like your first section is all about lament.
Right.
The world broken, are the shadows deepening, stopping the light from getting through. And the first thing I think is creation story. There's your first two lines for lessons and carols. Next section of the creation groaning, and when will we see the glory of the Lord in our midst? There's choral and
prophecy.
Those prophecy texts.
Yeah.
And who is worthy to break the seal? One who conquered the grave. He is David's root and the Lamb. And there's your Christmas section.
Yeah.
And you could jump the gun a little bit, and you get, like, later about the tribes and tongues and nations and the Spirit moving among us. And you could close out with some kind of spirity type of thing. I don't know. That could be a kind of maybe really lessons and carols. I'm going to steal that.
That is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. The other thing I've been thinking about is, two things. One is a resource. I don't know how many people know of it. It's called gracemusic.us. And Dan Kreider is the curator of that. He writes his own. Those that are looking at traditional hymnody in a praise band setting, he has it. And he's got arrangements for your classically trained pianist, instrumental parts to go with it. Some are full orchestra. If your choir is looking to sing some stuff, he has some new hymns on there that there was one we sang at our hymn festival last year called His Robes for Mine. Would make a wonderful Good Friday hymn. Very contemporary, but yet very singable. So there's a resource for everybody. A lot of this stuff is free. You download the PDF and it's yours. And so there you go. So the other thing is more of the last question I have, if we have that kind of time, is our worship committee was put on sabbatical in April. And our church is going through kind of a restructuring. It's like, okay, what does the future look like at Beckwith Hills, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things was worship committee took a break. And at first I was scared to death about this concept. And it's been 6 months and I have never felt the most freest person in doing what I feel is required, necessary, and in tune with the life of the congregation as far as worship. And I think, I'm going to write kind of a summary to the council about that, saying, hey, this is my vibe on the whole thing. But they want to reconvene the worship committee, and I'm like, well, let's relook at how this is reconvened. And I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on the structure of what the worship committee. I've been asking around in a few churches in the area, and one of them is like, if you're not personally a leader in the in worship, then maybe if you're just going to sit at the table once a month and not do anything, then maybe you're not the person. But at the same time, I'm kind of like going, well, okay, so what does a worship committee look like in a new in the year 2019? I'm open for suggestions.
6 months is a really long time to fly solo.
It's been actually kind of invigorating. So
the structure that we tried in our last like reconfiguration of a worship committee was kind of like the wheel approach, because there aren't very many churches that have designated staff people for worship. So what we found is that it's hard to have a fully functioning and operating team when one staff person's job is basically to do all of those things. What worked best was like kind of the wheel approach, that like you serve as the center of the wheel with various branches going out from that wheel that all basically report back to you at the center. So under that, we had our technology team, visuals. We had an evaluation branch, which also, an evaluation branch, and then like the basic worship planning team. So there's like 4 different spokes to this wheel, with like each operating in their own sphere, doing their own thing, but all kind of ultimately reporting back to you as chair of that team. Which again, it's like, it's a great problem to have, but like not many churches have that experience where they have a staff person whose main job it is to do work. Jeff says, it seems that the structure of the committee should flow out of its purpose. Why do you need or want a worship committee, and what is their role? To choose music, to plan seasons, to provide input or feedback. Depending on those answers, it may be clear how your team forms.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my context, I'm, the dedicated staff person. Right. So our worship planning team has been, less hands-on, not so much we're all picking out the songs together. I don't know if that's good or bad. I might just have control issues. That's very likely. But it has been cool having them for a lot of like let's talk about what happened last Sunday, the good and the bad, and what can we celebrate, what can we improve kind of things. Even about logistics and tech and that kind of stuff. And then so our team tends to be a little more of a bird's eye view, planning seasons at a time, like Jeff mentioned. What is a series going to look like, and can we brainstorm together? And yes, talking about songs, but less hung up in the nitty gritty details, just because, I don't know, maybe that's more structured around my personality, just that I love the planning out of the songs. And it's tough. It can be really fun to do that as a team, but it can also be super challenging. It can go either way. I don't know if that's helpful. Maybe that's how everybody does it. I don't know, but that's kind of the pattern that we've fallen into.
In the interest of time, because it's 3 o'clock and I want to be sensitive to any people's time today, are there any other participants on the call who have a quick question they want to type in the chat box? We've got a couple minutes if anyone has a question, something specific that you're working on for this year. If there's anyone, feel free to enter a question. If not, we will wrap up and hand back to Diane. We'll give it 1 minute to see.
Just a shout out of thanks to Jeff, who's commenting along with us and sharing lots of great ideas. Really appreciate that.
Jeff says, our theme is King of Kings. Has anyone used the song from Resound called What Kind of Throne? And Jeff, you're not the only one on this call. We have not. That's not a familiar
No.
to me.
I think I may have heard of that song. I don't think we've used it, but something about what kind of king would give up his throne, what kind of something, yeah. Anyway, it struck me as a very cool song for what it's worth.
I'm pretty sure Hillsong has a new King of Kings song that's out, although I don't know much about it, but I think it's kind of one of those up and coming songs.
Jeff, if you are interested, if you guys do lessons and carols, at one of our churches did a lessons and carols service called Awaiting the King. Because last year, the Advent theme at one of the churches was preached through the book of Daniel. And so talked about the king. He says, each week I will preach on King David, then Saul, then Solomon, then the divided kingdom, then restored kingdom on Christmas Eve. That sounds like a very cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have a lessons and carols service that might line up really well with that series. If you have any interest, shoot me an email. If there is anyone else, go ahead. But if not, Diane, I will hand it back to you.
All right, I'll take it, Katie. Did you have anything to ask, Katie? You didn't get you kind of moderated everybody else's questions, but I think we can go a few minutes over. Did you have one question to ask the group?
Like I said, we're kind of working on the opposite of Kyle. And as I was brainstorming for Kyle, I was like, I could probably use that visual. That might be a cool thing to do this year. But I'm okay, Diane. We can wrap. That's all right.
Okay, it was great. There were a lot of interesting ideas thrown out there or discussed and shared, and I've taken notes on those. So when I post this recording, wait till next week someday. It'll come out when we get it finalized and all online. But when I post it, I will list all of the resources that were listed today, and I will include links for some of the websites that were also named. So those should be helpful for you when you go back. So yeah, check out the website and the YouTube. We'll get this out there, and we'll let all of you know, especially who attended, that it's ready. Thanks a lot, everybody, and join us on the 23rd. We will have another webinar. That's Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Reverend Len Vanderzee will be talking about the Lord's Supper, the theology and practice of the Lord's Supper. So you might get some good ideas there too. So thanks again to our panel, Christina, Katie, Kyle, Kevin, and somebody whose name doesn't start with K, James. Thanks to all of you. It was great to have you here, and it would be lovely to continue this. Maybe for Lent and Easter, we can do this again and do it a couple times and get lots of participants. And yes, thanks for all of you that participated or attended, and we will see you later. Have a great day.